Evan walked slowly down the wide corridor of the alien station. The walls were shiny and smooth, glowing softly in colors that humans could barely describe. He was a medical technician, small and ordinary among the tall and strange aliens who moved with sharp, precise steps. He had always felt like he did not belong here, but today he had a task that made his heart beat fast. The alien queen had a small injury, and he had been sent to clean it. It was not dangerous work, but he knew that every move he made would be watched by the royal guards. The queen's chamber was enormous. The floor reflected the ceiling, making the room feel endless. Alien attendants moved quickly around, carrying tools that looked like metal claws and glowing liquids in bottles. Evan felt a little nervous. He had worked in human hospitals before, but nothing like this. The aliens' ways were different. Their medicine was advanced, powerful, and precise, but it was cold. They treated injuries like machines, not living beings. Evan had learned that humans had a different way. Humans used touch, patience, and calm words to help people feel safe. A voice called from the far side of the room. "The human. Bring him here." Evan stepped forward. His legs felt heavy, but he kept his head up. The queen sat on a throne that floated slightly above the ground. Her skin was dark and shiny, almost like polished stone, and her eyes were large, golden, and thoughtful. The small wound on her arm was hard to see, but he noticed a thin line of red that told him it hurt more than the alien attendants realized. "Approach slowly," one of the guards said. Evan nodded and moved closer. His hands were steady, but his heart beat fast. He carried a small tray with clean water, soft cloths, and a few simple human tools. The alien attendants looked at his items with curiosity and slight disdain. "What can he do with these?" one whispered. Evan ignored them. He knew that sometimes simple things worked better than fancy machines. He knelt gently near the queen. "I will clean the wound carefully," he said softly, using his quiet human voice. He dipped a cloth into the water and pressed it lightly to the cut. The queen flinched, but not too much. Her guards stiffened, ready to act at any sign of danger. Evan could feel their tension, but he focused only on the wound. He moved slowly, making sure not to hurt her more. The water was cool, and he wiped away the small traces of blood. The queen watched him closely. She did not speak, but her eyes followed every move. Evan realized that she was not used to being treated like a living being. In her world, injuries were fixed quickly, efficiently, and often painfully. But here, Evan's hands were gentle. His actions were slow, but they were careful. He spoke quietly, explaining each step. "This will not hurt. I am cleaning it so it can heal." His words were strange to her ears, but his voice was calm, not commanding. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the soft sound of the cloth on her skin. The attendants and guards watched, unsure what to do. The queen's breathing was even, and Evan could see a small change in her posture. She seemed more relaxed. The cold efficiency of her own people's medicine had never done this. She felt relief she did not expect. Evan finished the first pass. He lifted the cloth slowly and looked at the queen. "All done for now," he said softly. He moved his hands back to the tray. For a moment nothing happened. Then suddenly the queen reached out and grabbed his wrist. Evan froze. The guards tensed, ready to pull him away. But the queen's expression was calm, almost curious. She spoke slowly, her voice low but clear. "Do that again." Evan's heart jumped. He had expected fear, anger, or dismissal, but not this. She wanted him to repeat what he had just done. He nodded, carefully, not moving too fast. He dipped the cloth again, this time with even more attention. He wiped gently along the cut, making sure not to pull or press too hard. The queen did not flinch this time. Her eyes followed his every movement, but now there was something different. There was trust, or at least interest. The attendants whispered among themselves. "The human is strange. The queen allows him to touch her." The guards were still alert, but even they seemed puzzled. Evan realized that in that small moment he had done something his people always did without thinking. He had treated someone as human, as a living being with feelings, even if they were not human at all. When he finished the second pass, he gently set the cloth down. The queen released his wrist. She leaned back slightly, observing him, but with a quiet satisfaction. Evan stood up, heart still racing. He had done his job, but he had done more than that. In that quiet room, full of strange lights and unfamiliar sounds, a human had shown that care could mean more than power or technology. Evan left the chamber slowly, his tray empty but his mind full. He did not know what would happen next. The queen had not spoken more, but her eyes told him something he could not forget. She had seen something in him, something different. And in that moment, the small human gesture of cleaning a simple wound had become the start of something larger, something that might change how the aliens saw humans forever. Evan stayed still for a moment, unsure what to do next. The Queen's golden eyes followed him with an intensity he had never seen before. The guards had not moved, but their hands hovered near their weapons. The attendants whispered among themselves, curious and cautious. Evan realized that he had been given a rare chance. The Queen wanted him to act again. It was not a command in anger, it was curiosity, almost trust. He took a deep breath and picked up the cloth. He dipped it in the clean water again, making sure it was soft and cool. His fingers were steady now, even though his heart beat faster than before. He knelt near the Queen, careful to give her space and to move slowly. "I will clean it again," he said in his quiet, calm voice. "It will not hurt." The Queen did not speak. She only watched, her head tilted slightly as if studying him. Evan began gently wiping the wound. This time he noticed more clearly how the alien skin reacted to touch. It was tough, but it had a softness beneath that responded to careful care. The Queen flinched slightly but then relaxed as he moved slowly, precisely. He whispered small words of comfort, like he would to a frightened child back on Earth. His voice was calm, careful, and steady. The Queen's breathing began to slow, and for the first time her posture softened. The attendants were surprised. They had never seen the Queen allow anyone to touch her so freely, and certainly not a human. One of them whispered, "Why does she allow this?" Another shook its head. "It is different. Strange." The guards looked uneasy, but even they could see that nothing bad was happening. The Queen was not in pain. She was not angry. She was calm, almost peaceful. Evan worked carefully, learning with each pass how to adjust pressure and speed. He realized that humans were good at this because they paid attention not only to the wound but also to the person. The Queen's guards had the strongest medical machines, but those machines ignored fear, comfort, and patience. Evan's simple methods were slow, quiet, and gentle, but they worked in a way that no machine ever could. As he continued, he noticed something surprising. The Queen's eyes softened. There was a hint of something like relief or curiosity. She did not speak again, but she followed every movement with complete attention. Her golden gaze seemed to ask questions that she could not put into words. Evan felt the weight of her attention, but he did not flinch. He kept working quietly and carefully. When he finished the second pass, he lifted the cloth and looked at the Queen. The small wound was clean now, almost healed from the gentle care. He set the cloth down and stood slowly. The Queen did not release her gaze. Instead, she leaned back slightly on her throne, watching him. Then almost quietly she spoke, "You are different." Evan blinked. He was not sure if he heard correctly. The guards tensed. The attendants froze. But the Queen repeated, "You are different from the others." Her voice was low but firm. Evan did not move. He realized that she was not judging him. She was noticing something about humans that her people had never understood. He nodded slightly. "Humans care for each other," he said softly. "We help not only with tools but with patience and attention. We try to make people feel safe while we help them heal." The Queen tilted her head again, studying him. It was a silent question. She wanted to know more. Evan realized that this was more than just a simple task. He was teaching in a way without words. The Queen had never experienced care like this. Her empire relied on efficiency, strength, and technology. Pain was something to fix quickly, not something to respect or soothe. But here, with this small human, she felt something new. She felt calm. She felt relief. And she noticed that the relief came from the human's gentle attention, not the tools or machines. The Queen finally leaned back fully, her eyes still watching him. She gestured slightly with her hand, indicating that he could leave the room. Evan did not rush. He bowed his head slightly, respecting the silent authority of her gesture. He gathered his tray and stepped backward carefully, keeping his eyes on her. The attendants whispered and moved around him, amazed by what they had witnessed. The guards relaxed, though they still watched every movement. As Evan left the chamber, he felt a small sense of pride. He had not only cleaned a wound, but he had shown the Queen something that her empire had never known, that small, patient care could matter more than power or tools. Even though he was a simple human in a vast and strange world, he had made a difference. He paused in the corridor outside, breathing slowly. The Queen's words repeated in his mind, "You are different." He did not fully understand what it meant yet, but he knew that humans had shown a new strength today. It was not in weapons or machines, but in attention, patience, and the courage to act gently when others might act harshly. In that moment, Evan realized that even a small human gesture could be the start of a much larger change. Word of what had happened would spread quickly. Not just among the attendants and guards but eventually through the Empire. And somewhere, the Queen would remember this small human, the one who had cared enough to touch her wound with respect and patience. He had done his job. But he had also begun something greater. A quiet reminder that humans could teach even the strongest alien empires what true care meant. After that day, Evan returned to his small human quarters, but he could not stop thinking about the Queen. Something had changed in her eyes, something that no one else in the Empire had ever seen. He knew that his small act of care had made a difference, but he also realized that it was only the beginning. The Queen had allowed him to show her the human way of healing, and she had noticed that humans were different, not because of strength or technology but because of patience and understanding. The next morning, Evan was summoned again. This time he did not walk down the corridor alone. Several attendants had come with him and the royal guards flanked the doors. They were tense but not hostile. Evan carried his simple tray with water, cloths and tools. The Queen was waiting on her throne, calm but alert. Her golden eyes followed him as he knelt in front of her, ready to repeat the process if needed. "You will show them again," she said quietly. Her voice carried authority but also curiosity. She wanted the other attendants and guards to see how humans healed. Evan nodded, understanding that this was not just about cleaning a wound anymore. It was about teaching. He dipped the cloth in water and pressed it gently to the Queen's arm. The attendants watched closely, unsure of what to expect. The Queen flinched slightly but not as much as before. Evan spoke softly, explaining each motion as he went. "We clean carefully," he said. "We do not rush. We make sure the person is safe while we help them heal." The aliens listened, some frowning. They had always believed that efficiency was the best way. Machines and speed, they thought, were more important than patience. Evan moved slowly, carefully wiping the wound. The Queen's breathing steadied. She looked at him with quiet interest. "Your method is strange," one attendant whispered. Another shook its head. "It seems to work." "She is calm." Even the guards noticed the change. The Queen's posture was relaxed. Her breathing was smooth. She was not in pain. For the first time, they realized that this human's simple actions had more effect than their advanced machines. Evan continued to clean the wound with care. He paid attention not only to the cut, but also to the Queen's reactions. He adjusted pressure and speed, moving more slowly when she tensed and faster when she relaxed. He spoke softly, offering reassurance. His calm voice was unlike anything the aliens had heard. It was not commanding, not cold, not mechanical. It was gentle and understanding. After a few minutes, the wound was clean. Evan set the cloth down. The Queen examined her arm and then looked at him. "Humans, you are different from what I expected," she said. Her voice was steady, but her golden eyes shone with interest. "Your ways are slow, but they bring results my machines never could." Evan bowed slightly, feeling a quiet pride. He had done more than clean a wound. He had shown the Queen something her empire had never considered. Over the next few days, more aliens came to observe Evan. Some had minor injuries, others were curious about this new method. The Queen allowed him to demonstrate human healing to them. Each time the results were the same. Aliens who expected cold, fast treatment were surprised to feel relief and calm. They began to ask questions not just about the method but about humans themselves. How could such small, seemingly weak beings have such an effect on powerful creatures? Evan explained patiently. "We care for each other," he said. "We learn to notice fear and pain and we adjust. It is not only tools or strength that heal, it is understanding and patience." The aliens listened, some skeptical, some thoughtful. They had relied on power and technology for centuries, but they could not deny the results. The Queen watched quietly. She had started to realize that humans were valuable in ways her empire had never considered. Strength was not only measured in weapons or numbers, but in the courage to act gently and wisely. A human could influence even the strongest alien through small, careful actions. This idea was new and it fascinated her. Evan noticed that the Queen was changing. She no longer treated him as a simple human servant. She listened to him. She allowed him to teach. And in doing so, she began to change the way her empire viewed humans. The seeds of respect were planted. When he finally returned to his quarters, Evan thought about what had happened. His hands were still steady, his mind still calm. He had done what humans always did: help, heal, and show care even when it seemed small. But now he understood that his simple gesture had larger consequences. A human had begun to teach an alien empire a lesson in patience, understanding, and quiet strength. Evan knew that this was only the start. The Queen had seen the difference humans could make. Others would notice too. The empire, built on power and fear, had begun to understand a new kind of strength. And it had started with a human, a small tray, and a simple act of care. For the first time, Evan felt that humans might not only survive in this vast galaxy, they might lead in ways no one had expected. A small human gesture had begun to change everything. Word of the Queen's interest in human healing spread quickly through the empire. Aliens whispered in corridors and halls, curious about the small human who had calmed the Queen and healed her wound. Evan returned to the royal chamber once more, carrying his tray with simple tools. The guards and attendants watched him carefully, but there was no hostility. Even they seemed to sense that something unusual was happening. Humans, small and seemingly weak, were making a difference in ways no one had expected. The Queen greeted him with a calm nod. "Show them again," she said softly. This time, more attendants and even some lower-ranking nobles had been invited to observe. Evan knelt, as he had done before, and prepared his materials. He dipped a cloth in clean water and pressed it lightly against the Queen's arm. The room was silent, all eyes focused on the small human who was about to perform his gentle work once more. Evan spoke softly as he worked. "We go slowly," he said. "We make sure the person feels safe while we help them heal. Speed is not always the best medicine." The Queen watched carefully, her golden eyes following every movement. The attendants leaned in, whispering to each other. "He moves slowly, but she is calm," one said. Another shook his head. "It should not work, and yet it does." As Evan cleaned the wound, he realized that something larger was happening. The Queen was not only receiving care, she was learning from it. She began to ask questions quietly. "Why do humans care so much?" she asked. "Why do you move slowly and speak softly?" Evan smiled slightly. "Because people heal better when they feel safe," he replied. "It is not only the tools that matter but how we use them. Attention and care can do what machines cannot." The Queen nodded slightly. She began to see the value in this approach. Her empire had relied on power, speed, and efficiency for centuries. Injuries were treated quickly, without thought to comfort. But here was a small human showing a different way, and the results were clear. Even powerful aliens, used to cold and precise medicine, felt calm and relief under Evan's careful touch. Over the next few weeks, Evan's role grew. The Queen allowed him to demonstrate his methods to other injured aliens. Every time the results were the same. Aliens who expected pain and cold treatment found comfort and healing instead. They began to ask questions about humans and their ways. Guards and attendants observed closely, learning that strength could exist in patience and understanding. Even the Queen's advisors began to take notice. One day, after a long demonstration, the Queen spoke to Evan privately. "Your people, they are different from any I have seen. They are not strong because of size or weapons. They are strong because they care and they act with thought and attention." Evan bowed slightly. "That is how humans survive," he said simply. "We help each other even when it is difficult. That is how we grow stronger." The Queen considered his words carefully. The influence of humans began to grow quietly within the empire. Aliens who had once ignored them now asked for guidance. They wanted to learn human methods of care, patience, and observation. The Queen began to assign humans to advisory roles, not because of fear or obedience, but because their small acts of thoughtfulness had shown results. The empire, built on power and order, was beginning to see the value of a different kind of strength. Evan continued his work, but he remained humble. He did not seek praise or recognition. To him, it was always about helping others one step at a time. But he began to notice subtle changes. The Queen treated him with respect. The guards no longer glared at him with suspicion. The attendants watched and listened, learning that even a small human could influence the greatest of alien rulers. One afternoon, the Queen summoned Evan to her private chamber. She gestured to the wounds of several visiting aliens. "Show them again," she said. "Let them see how humans heal." Evan knelt and began his work, carefully cleaning each injury, speaking softly and explaining each step. The room was filled with quiet attention, broken only by the gentle sounds of the cloth on skin. For the first time, aliens began to see humans not as weak or small, but as teachers, guides, and healers. By the time Evan finished, the Queen spoke to all present. "Humans are different. They show us that strength is not only in power but in care. We will learn from them. We will respect them." Her words spread quickly through the empire. Aliens whispered and shared the story of the small human who had taught the Queen a new way. Slowly, quietly, humans were becoming valued in the empire, not because of force but because of courage, patience, and care. Evan returned to his quarters that evening, tired but satisfied. He had done only what he always did, cared for others with patience and respect. Yet his small human actions had begun to change the hearts and minds of an entire empire. He realized that humans did not need weapons or power to make a difference. Sometimes, a small gesture, a gentle touch, and quiet words were enough to start a revolution of understanding. As he looked out over the glowing corridors of the alien station, Evan smiled. He had begun as a simple medical technician, a human who barely mattered in the vast empire. Now, his small acts of care had begun to shape the empire itself. The Queen had learned that strength could exist in gentleness. And humans, quiet and patient, had shown that even the smallest among them could teach the galaxy something new. Evan had never thought much about his place in the galaxy. He was a simple human, a medical technician, quietly doing his work. But now, after weeks of tending the Queen and showing her people the human way of healing, everything had begun to change. Aliens who had once ignored humans now sought their guidance. The Queen had shared her newfound respect, and humans were no longer considered weak or unimportant. The Queen summoned Evan to her throne room once more. The chamber was full of attendants, guards, and several lower-ranking nobles. Their eyes were wide with curiosity and respect. The Queen's golden eyes focused on Evan. "Today you will show them the full way," she said. "Let all see how humans heal." Evan nodded and carried his small tray of water, cloths, and simple tools. He knelt in front of the Queen and began his work as he always did, gently cleaning her arm. As he worked, he spoke softly, explaining each step to the audience. "We do not rush," he said. "We pay attention to each movement, each reaction. Healing is not only about tools or strength. It is about understanding the person we help." The attendants listened carefully. The guards, who had once regarded humans as weak, now watched with fascination. Even the nobles leaned forward, curious to see how such small acts could create calm and relief. The Queen observed quietly, her golden eyes following every motion. She had learned more in the past weeks than she had from all her empire's medical texts. Machines and advanced techniques were not always enough. Sometimes, a patient touch and careful attention could heal faster and better than anything else. She realized that humans had a gift her empire had overlooked for centuries: the courage to care. As Evan finished the first pass, he lifted the cloth gently. The Queen's wound was clean, her skin smooth and unharmed. She looked at him and nodded slightly. "You have shown them well," she said. "Your ways are slow, but they bring results that my empire has never seen before. Humans do not rely on power, yet they influence more than many realize." Evan bowed his head, feeling a quiet pride. He had not done anything extraordinary in his mind, but the results spoke for themselves. The attendants and nobles whispered among themselves. They had watched powerful aliens be healed not by machines or force, but by a small human using only water, cloths, and care. Some of them were skeptical, but they could not deny the effect. Even the guards, trained to doubt and protect, felt respect for the human who had quietly taught them a lesson in patience and understanding. The Queen spoke again, addressing the room. "Humans are different. They show us a new kind of strength. Not through size, weapons, or speed, but through courage, patience, and care. We will learn from them. We will respect them. They are not our subjects, they are our teachers." The words echoed through the chamber, and a quiet murmur of agreement spread among the attendants and nobles. Over the following weeks, humans were given new roles in the empire. Some were advisors, teaching aliens the human methods of care and patience. Others became diplomats, trusted not only because they were small and harmless, but because their ability to think and act gently could influence even the strongest beings. Evan continued his work quietly, helping where he could, but he noticed the changes around him. Humans were no longer ignored. They were valued. One evening, Evan returned to the Queen's chamber. She was alone, studying a map of the empire. "You have changed much in a short time," she said. "Not because of force, not because of skill, but because of who you are. Your people remind us that strength can exist in gentleness. That courage is not always loud or violent. That humans can lead in ways others cannot." Evan nodded. He did not speak. Words were unnecessary. The Queen had seen it, understood it, and shared it with her empire. Evan realized then that his small human actions had created something far larger than a single healed wound. They had begun to change the heart of an entire empire. Humans who were once overlooked and underestimated were now respected, valued, and trusted. Their simple courage, their quiet patience, and their ability to care in a harsh universe had made them strong in a way no one could ignore. As he left the chamber that night, Evan walked through the glowing halls of the alien station. The lights reflected off the polished walls, and for the first time he felt at home. He had come to this vast, strange galaxy as a small, ordinary human, but now he knew that humans could make a difference. Not through power or technology but through empathy, patience, and the courage to act with care when others would not. The Queen's words stayed with him. Humans are strong because they care. They are leaders because they understand. They are different, and that difference would change the galaxy forever. Evan smiled quietly to himself. He had done nothing extraordinary, yet everything had changed. One small human gesture, repeated with patience and respect, had begun a new chapter for humans and aliens alike. And in that moment he understood that true strength often comes from the quietest acts, the simplest choices, and the courage to help when it matters most.